My name's Lily. I'm 33 now, and I've always been the kind of guy who remembers people's birthdays, shows up with a present in hand, and sticks around to help clean up, even if I wasn't the one who made the mess in the first place. But with my family, that's never really been appreciated. I wouldn't say I'm the black sheep exactly, more like the one no one notices. I don't cause drama, I'm not loud, and I've never had a big blowout with anyone. Still, over the years, I've felt that quiet, steady drift, like I was slowly being pushed out of the picture. It started with small stuff. Group texts I was never added to. Jokes that went right over my head because I didn't have the context. Family photos where I was missing, even though I'd been there, just standing a little off to the side. I always gave them the benefit of the doubt, figured they just forgot. I used to tell myself it wasn't intentional. I clung to that idea for way too long. I think part of me believed that if I just kept showing up, stayed helpful, stayed kind, they'd notice me again eventually. The problem with being quietly excluded is it gives people an excuse. They can pretend they didn't mean to leave you out. That plausible deniability? It's brutal. No one has to come right out and say, "You're not welcome." Instead, they just stop including you, and eventually, you stop expecting to be asked. Last month, I was at my nephew Neil's 7th birthday, my sister's kid. I showed up with a Lego Star Wars set he'd been begging for, and we even sat down and built the first part together. After the party wound down and the rest of the adults left, I stuck around to help with dishes while my sister scrolled through her phone. We chatted, made small talk, just everyday stuff. For a little while, it felt normal. Like maybe things were finally smoothing out. So when I casually said, "Can't wait for the big family dinner tomorrow, looking forward to catching up with everyone," I meant it. I really did. Then my cousin Alice, mid-bite of leftover cake, suddenly froze. A second later, she burst out laughing. "Wait, you don't know. That was yesterday." My stomach turned. I looked over at my aunt, half hoping she'd tell me it was a joke. But no, she pulled out her phone without missing a beat. There it was. A long dinner table set up in my parents' backyard, fairy lights strung overhead, champagne glasses on the table. Everyone was dressed up. People I hadn't seen in years, cousins, extended relatives, were all there. There were toasts, speeches, kids running around, big group photos. It wasn't just some random backyard get-together. It was the family dinner. The one my mom throws every summer. The one that's practically a family reunion. My aunt kept flipping through the pictures like she was showing me highlights from a vacation. "Oh, this one was right before dessert," she said. "That's when your mom gave her little speech about being surrounded by all her blessings." She said that last part slower, almost like she realized, too late, that maybe I wasn't supposed to hear it. But the damage was already done. My face burned. My mouth went dry. And then my sister, who hadn't said a single word this whole time, looked up from drying a plate and muttered, "Maybe take the hint next time." Just like that. I didn't say a word. Didn't argue. Didn't move. I just stood there for a few seconds, watching her wipe down a serving tray like she hadn't just ripped the floor out from under me. The room felt like it was closing in. I set the sponge down, walked to the living room, picked up the envelope with Neil's birthday card, and the gift card I'd tucked in as a surprise, and I left. On the drive home, her words played on a loop in my head. Take the hint. Over and over. She didn't say it with anger. It wasn't harsh. It was tired, like this was overdue. Like I was the fool who hadn't caught on despite all the signs. Like I was an unwanted guest, still clinging to the idea that I had a place at the table. I won't lie, I cried in the car. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed either. It wasn't really about missing that dinner. It was about finally seeing things clearly. That was the moment it sank in. I wasn't part of the family anymore, not in the real sense. At best, I was an afterthought. A box to check out of obligation. That night, I didn't sleep a minute. I just stared up at the ceiling, going back over years of slights I'd brushed off. The time they said Christmas dinner was only for immediate family, then posted pictures with people I barely even recognized. The group chats I only heard about through secondhand screenshots. The birthdays that went unnoticed. The jokes I didn't get because they happened in rooms I was never invited into. But here's the truth. I'm not vengeful. I'm not out to hurt anyone. That's never been who I am. What I really needed, was to be done. Done hoping. Done trying. Done handing out grace like candy, hoping it'd earn me a seat that was never actually set for me. That night, I started making plans. Not revenge, not exactly. Something more lasting. Something they wouldn't see coming, because, really, they never saw me at all. The first step was money. You see, for the last few years, I've been doing alright. I work in IT, and while I'm not rich, I've made some smart moves. Especially once I got into property management. Nobody asks about my life, so they don't realize I now own 3 rental properties. They have no clue that I've been quietly covering things for my parents, like roof repairs and I'd even helped cover plumbing issues, quietly funneling money through anonymous grants I set up under my LLC. I never asked for recognition. That wasn't the point. I just wanted to help, because they were my parents. Or at least, they used to be. A week after Neil's birthday party, my mom called me in a panic. The air conditioning had gone out during the first heat wave of the season, and she was barely holding it together. The repairs are gonna cost over $8,000, she said, her voice shaky. We talked to your usual guy, and he said he didn't get the maintenance retainer this year. Did something happen with the fund? I told her, calmly and without any emotion, that I'd shut down the grant program. She didn't get it at first. There was this long pause like she was waiting for me to explain. But I didn't offer anything else. I'm sure you and everyone who made it to the dinner can figure something out, I said. Silence. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head. I didn't stick around to listen. I told her I had to go, wished her well, and ended the call. That same day, I reached out to my lawyer. Over the years, I'd helped with a lot more than just utilities. I'd set aside college savings for my niece, paid for emergency dental work when my uncle cracked a molar, even funded a part-time assistant so my sister could scale her Etsy shop. Quiet, invisible support. What no one realized was that all of those funds had conditions, legal clauses baked into the agreements, hidden in plain sight. And every single one of those clauses gave me the right to terminate the arrangement at will. All it took was a few signatures. I signed the paperwork, had my lawyer send out the formal notices, and froze the accounts. Within 2 weeks, the fallout started. My inbox was a mess: emails, missed calls, voicemails, FaceTime requests. One message from a cousin just said, "What is happening?" I didn't answer. And then, the kicker, the family group chat came alive. Not the one I'd been left out of all these years. The original one. The one I had created 5 years ago when Grandpa passed away and we were scrambling to organize the funeral. I still had admin privileges. So I changed the name of the group. I called it, Maybe Take the Hint. Then, one by one, I removed every single person from it. No explanation. No comment. Just silence. But I wasn't done. Not yet. There was still one loose thread. One thing I hadn't reclaimed. And once I did, it changed everything. That last thread tying me to them was the lake house. It technically wasn't all mine. It had originally belonged to my grandparents, and when they passed, it was handed down to my mom and her sister, Aunt Matt. After Matt died, her portion went to Alice. Yeah, that Alice, the cousin who laughed in my face at the birthday party. Years ago, when my mom fell behind on some bills, I quietly bought out her half. So, legally, I owned 50%. But somehow, no one updated their internal scoreboard. In their minds, it was still Grandma's lake house. Everybody used it whenever they wanted, weekends, holidays, even whole summers. And I never stopped them. I never once asked to use it for myself. Never told them no. I even paid for the new dock last summer. Quietly, like always. No credit. No thanks needed. But now the lake house was my stage. And I finally had my scene. I waited for Memorial Day weekend, the big one. Every year for more than a decade, the whole family made a thing out of it. Barbecues, bonfires, the kids catching fish off the dock while the grown-ups got drunk on cheap wine and nostalgia. I used to love it. Of course, I hadn't been invited in 3 years. This year, I didn't need an invite. All I needed was to show up. 3 days before the holiday, I filed the paperwork to restrict access to my half of the property. There was a little-known clause in the deed, something that allowed a co-owner to partition usage if disputes came up. My lawyer made sure the whole thing was airtight. I wasn't banning anyone from the house. I was just saying that moving forward, they'd need my consent as co-owner to use it. A formal agreement. Nothing unreasonable. Alice hadn't seen the notice. No surprise there. She was used to me being nice Lily. The one who kept quiet and cleaned up messes behind the scenes. Friday morning, I drove up early. I unlocked the house, parked my truck sideways across the gravel drive so no one else could pull in behind me, and waited. It didn't take long. Around noon, 3 cars pulled in, my mom, my sister, and Alice, plus their kids and partners. Laughter spilled out of the vehicles. That is, until they saw me standing there. Alice got out first. "You're here?" she said, her voice already tight with suspicion. I smiled, calm as could be. "It's Memorial Day. Thought I'd enjoy the lake." She walked up to me with her arms crossed, eyebrows raised. "Well, we made plans to stay the weekend. I told Mom she could have the master bedroom." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's gonna be tricky. The property's under co-owner review. The house is locked until a usage agreement is signed." She blinked, clearly confused. "What agreement? What are you talking about?" My sister, already annoyed, cut in. "Lily, come on. Don't make this a thing. Just because you didn't get invited to one dinner." I held up my hand, steady and calm. It wasn't one dinner. And it was never really about the dinner. It was about something deeper. Respect. The kind this family stopped offering me a long time ago. Eventually, my mom stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lily, sweetheart, we didn't mean to hurt you. Things just got hectic. You know how it gets." For a second, I almost belilieved her. I almost let that old instinct kick in, the one that always told me to give her the benefit of the doubt. But then I remembered. I remembered every time she brushed aside my sister's cruelty. Every time she downplayed the way I was left out, treated like an afterthought. The way she'd smooth things over by telling me to rise above it, to be the bigger person, again and again and again. "I know exactly how it is," I said. "And that's why I'm standing here now. This place isn't your free-for-all vacation spot anymore. If you want access," I added, keeping my voice even, "then we draw up a new agreement. We split the costs. We take turns using it fairly." I shrugged. "Or we sell. Simple as that." Alice's voice snapped through the air, sharp and incredulous. "You wouldn't dare. You'd blow up a family tradition over what? Your failings being hurt." I didn't blink. Just looked her straight in the eye and said, "No. You already broke the family part. I'm just finalizing the paperwork." That's when it started, the pushback. They tried guilt. They tried shouting, pleading, throwing around accusations like darts. My mom's eyes welled up. My sister called me selfish. Alice threatened a lawsuit. None of it touched me. I had every message, every transaction, every clause lined up like dominoes. They'd spent years acting like my silence meant I was okay with how things were. But that silence? It was gone now. And in its place was something sharper. Clarity. Cold, firm, necessary. Eventually, they gave up and left. Not before throwing a few parting shots my way, of course. But I didn't flinch. I stayed there on that porch, watching until the last car disappeared down the gravel road. Then I went inside, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sat in the old rocking chair, the one Grandma used to sit in when we were kids. Later that night, I built a fire out back, watched the flames flicker and spit, the smoke curling into the dark sky like fading memories. It reminded me of those 4th of July nights when everything still felt whole. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't aching to belong. I just was. But the final piece? That came the next morning. Because I still had one more thing to send. Something that would show them the real consequences hadn't even begun to settle in yet. I woke up early, to the sound of birds and nothing else. No kids shouting on the dock. No speakers blaring bad music from the porch. No smell of my sister's always burnt bacon wafting through the windows. Just quiet. Stillness so pure it almost felt unnatural. And I liked it. I made myself a cup of coffee, walked barefoot down to the shoreline, and watched the mist hover over the lake like a secret trying to escape. I had a lot on my mind. But sadness wasn't one of those things. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was focused. Settled. The night before had been the line. Now, it was time to make it permanent. Before heading back to the city, I stopped by the post office and handed over a thick manila envelope addressed to our family attorney. Inside was everything, the final move. It was my formal decision to sell my share of the lake house. Not to a stranger off the street, but to a couple I'd already vetted. Retired, quiet, from out of state. No kids. No chaos. Just people looking for a peaceful summer retreat. I even offered them a small discount in exchange for one condition: they'd put up a modest fence along the dividing line. Nothing huge, just enough to mark where their property began, and where it ended. Something legal. Something visible. Something that made sure no one would wander in uninvited again, assuming the place was still theirs. But that envelope didn't just include the contract. On top of the documents was a single page, a letter. My exit letter. I wrote it over 2 nights. Carefully. Intentionally. I didn't want to lash out or get ugly. I wanted to tell the truth. All of it. Here's part of what I wrote. To everyone who forgot me. You probably never noticed it, but over time, I turned into a ghost in this family. Not because I drifted away, but because you slowly, quietly, pushed me there. With every party I wasn't invited to, every group chat I didn't know existed, every inside joke I didn't understand, you chipped away at me. I was always the helper. The giver. The quiet one. The guy who showed up, brought a gift, stayed behind to do the dishes. I didn't ask for much. Just a little kindness. A little acknowledgement. But the message has been loud and clear. I'm not family. I'm a resource. A favor. A forgotten seat at the table. So now I'm taking the hint. You won't need to forget to invite me anymore. You won't have to whisper when I leave the room or roll your eyes when I walk in. I'm not mad. I'm not out for revenge. I'm just done. This house was the last thread tying me to all of you. And now, I've let it go. The couple who bought the place. They're good people. Kind, respectful. They'll take care of it the way it deserves. And don't worry, they don't do surprise visitors. Not even on holidays. So let this letter be your notice. I'm no longer available for guilt trips, gaslighting, or group chats. I genuinely wish you all the best. I do. But from now on, I'm choosing peace. Mine, Lily. 3 days later, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Non-stop buzzing. Missed calls. Voicemails piling up. Texts flying in faster than I could ignore them, starting off confused, then shifting to panic, and finally settling into outright anger. My sister, who hadn't said anything kind to me in over a year, suddenly found her voice. Messages like, "You're breaking Mom's heart," or, "You're acting like a child." Alice went full novella, long, dramatic texts that started with, "Are you seriously selling the house?" and ended with, "You're going to regret this." But the one that landed hardest came from my mom. Just one line. "Why are you doing this to us?" I stared at that message for a long time. I almost responded. I even typed a few things, some sharp, some soft. One version just said, "Because you let them." But I deleted it all. Because deep down, she already knew. A week later, the sale went through. The new owners took over. The family tried to stop it, but they were too late. Alice hadn't kept up with her share of the maintenance taxes, and thanks to a rarely used clause I'd activated through my LLC, I held majority control. They couldn't block the deal. Not legally. Not financially. Not emotionally. It was finished. Summer passed. They ended up booking a lakeside Airbnb 2 towns over. I saw the pictures on Instagram, Alice's, of course. New doc. Same awkward smiles. Same forced togetherness, like they were trying to prove nothing had changed. But it had. Because the next time they needed something, help, money, a last-minute favor, there was no Lily to lean on. No quiet cleanup crew. No wallet with Faye Lylings, as they once called me on a hot mic during a Zoom call they didn't know I was still in. And while they scrambled to adjust, I was building something better. A life where I wasn't invisible. A community of friends who saw me, appreciated me, laughed with me, and never made me beg for a seat at their table. This wasn't about revenge. It was about release. Still, life has a funny sense of humor. 2 months after the house officially changed hands, something interesting landed on my desk at work. We just launched a new mentorship initiative, paid training in IT and project management for people looking to reset their careers. One of the applicants, Alice. She didn't know the applications would come straight to me. And she definitely didn't expect the note I stapled to her rejection letter. Just 6 words. Maybe take the hint next time. The weeks after that were quieter than I expected. The calls stopped. The texts dried up. The silence, the same silence that once gutted me, was finally mutual. And for once, I didn't feel the need to fix it. I stopped checking their posts. Unsubscribed from the last shared family calendars. Left the lingering email threads without announcement. My phone was quiet. My mind, even quieter. But clarity isn't the same as peace. Not at first. There were still nights I lay awake, wondering if I'd gone too far. If I should have just kept swallowing it down. Kept being the steady one. The fixer. The background character who stayed quiet to keep the family illusion from falling apart. That guilt, it's like a worn-in jacket. Ugly, but familiar. Weirdly comforting. But I started to see it for what it was, a tool people use when they can't control you any other way. It wasn't easy, but I finally let it go. And something new grew in its place. Something solid. Dignity. Boundaries. A strange but welcome pride in choosing myself, finally, fully, over people who would never have chosen me. Work improved, too. I got promoted. Turns out when your energy isn't being drained by people who only show up to take, your brain starts to breathe again. I even booked that trip to Kyoto I'd been putting off for years. Went alone. Spent 2 weeks walking through quiet bamboo forests, sipping matcha on shaded balconies, watching temple bells swing in slow motion. I didn't post about it. Didn't text anyone. I just lived it. Fully. Quietly. For me. The last thread unraveled on Thanksgiving. That day had always been a production, hosted at my parents' house with recipes copied from grandma's old notes, dad's consistently dry turkey, and the usual squabbles over fireplace seating. If I showed up, I usually ended up wedged in a folding chair by the coat rack, barely part of the conversation. Eventually, I stopped going. No one really noticed. But this year was different. That morning, someone knocked at my door. It was my dad. I hadn't seen him in almost a year. He looked older. A little more worn down. A little smaller. His hair used to be jet black. Now, it was mostly gray. He looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that went beyond age. He was holding a foil-covered dish, and his eyes were red, not from crying, I don't think, but from the kind of slow erosion that happens when a man finally has to sit with the weight of his choices. "Can I come in?" he asked. I didn't say anything. Just stepped aside. He walked in, sat down at the kitchen table, and set the dish down without a word. He didn't offer it, didn't explain what it was. Just stared at the grain of the wood like it might offer answers he didn't have. "Your mother's not doing well," he finally said. I nodded slowly. That happens when people lose control. He flinched, whether at the words or the quiet way I delivered them, I couldn't tell. "She's sorry, Lily," he said after a moment. "She says it every day." I poured him a glass of water and sat down across from him. She had years to say it to my face. He looked like he wanted to push back, maybe defend her. But then he sighed. "You were right to walk away," he said, surprising me. "I told her we handled things wrong. That we treated you like some kind of outsider in your own family." He paused. "I even tried talking to your sister about it. She said you're just being dramatic. That you're holding a grudge." I let out a quiet laugh. Not because it was funny, because of course she did. "She's not doing so great either," he added. "Her Etsy thing shut down. She's living with us now. Your mom's overwhelmed." And then he looked up at me. Really looked at me. "I'm not here to guilt you," he said. "I came because I realized something. You weren't the one who abandoned us. We abandoned you. And we just got comfortable assuming you'd never push back." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, sure, but honest. Then he said, "I read your letter." I raised an eyebrow. "The one you sent to the lawyer," he clarified. "He forwarded it to me after the house sold. I read it 3 times. I cried every time. I didn't know what to say." "You're a better man than I ever gave you credit for," he said. "I'm sorry it took losing the house, and losing you, to see that. And the thing is, I believed him. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was the rawness in his voice, the absence of performance. Just a tired man showing up, finally, without a mask." I stood up, walked to the fridge, and pulled out the small pumpkin pie I'd picked up the day before. Sliced 2 pieces. Set one in front of him. "No turkey," I said, "but it's got real whipped cream." He managed a small smile. We didn't talk much after that. Just sat and ate. 2 men with too much history between them and no clear path forward. But it was something. Not a fix. Not a full reconciliation. But a beginning. And I made it clear, if anything was going to be different from here on out, it would happen on my terms. No more quiet appeasement. No more playing the supporting role in my own life. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. From my mom. I read it twice. Then I folded it up and put it away. I wasn't ready to write back. Maybe I never would be. Because forgiveness doesn't show up just because someone asks for it. It comes with time. With change. Not apologies born of consequence. The weeks went by. Winter settled in. But this time, I wasn't bracing myself for the cold. I was carrying something new. A kind of peace I hadn't known in years. Not surface peace. Real peace. Earned peace. Then, right before Christmas, I got a text. Not from my sister. Not from Alice. From Neil. My nephew. It was a video. "Hey Uncle Lily," he said, grinning with 2 front teeth missing. "Mom says we're not supposed to talk to you, but I miss you." I told her that's dumb. He held up a Lego spaceship, clearly proud. "I'm building another one. It's got 3 engines this time." In the background, I heard my sister yell, "Neil, give me that phone." Then the video cut off. I watched it again. And again. It didn't make me angry. It just made my chest ache. Not for me. For him. For the fact that a kid was already being pulled into the same pattern, the silence, the emotional landmines, the way love turned conditional. He didn't deserve that. So I sent one back. "Hey bud," I said, smiling into the camera. "That sounds like the fastest ship in the galaxy. I bet it can outrun anything. I miss you too. And I'm always here. No matter what anyone says. Okay." I never heard back. And that was okay. Because I meant it. This was never about revenge. It was about stopping the bleeding. About protecting myself in a way I should have learned to do a long time ago. I built boundaries not to hurt them, but to heal me. And maybe, just maybe, to show someone like Neil that it's okay to draw a line. To say no. To step back from people who only love you when it's convenient. As for me, I'm doing alright. I bought a new place. Nothing fancy, smaller, warmer. Real fireplace. Big front porch. I host game nights now. Cook for people who don't criticize every dish. I laugh more. Sleep better. And when those old photos pop up on my phone, the ones where I'm half smiling at family events, standing just out of frame like I belonged but wasn't sure, I swipe past them. Not out of bitterness. But because I'm free.